And we're live. Welcome to the Flow Show. It's June 4th. Sarah DiFelice here, and we have.
Tim Glover.
And today, we didn't actually name this show, but we're going to talk about some of the world events and from the perspective of flow, of course. So stay tuned for a good show. Well, thank you for that lovely intro, as always.
A short intro. A frantic short intro.
A frantic short intro, and we're a little bit more up close and personal today with our framing.
Yes. I had to change the shirt.
Yes, Tim.
Just so it actually, this is more of an up close personal shirt.
It's a very bright, sun, cheery.
Yes.
Yellow.
Well, I can move as if I'm part of the painting behind me.
Yes, this is true.
This is flow.
This is flow.
Actually, that shoulder could use a bit of a rub. Just doing the hair. I'm just going to do this for a while.
You didn't know you're going to have a little exercise class today, did you, Flow viewers? So, hello, Flow viewers.
Hello, Flow viewers.
Last week we had the Groundhog Day episode replay, which was fun, and today we're gonna just flow as we always do with conversation, talk about some world events, but we do always appreciate your comments. This is about engaging and creating a conversation. It's always been about that. So we really appreciate that. Even if you're tuning in the future at some point, just let us know that you're here and feel free to add your comment. So Tim, we didn't name the show today.
I know. I'm just realizing. So there is no marker on
our theme,
on the narrative. So we were talking. So what came up for me, and has been coming up for me like crazy over the last few days, which is quite obvious, is the challenges that the United States are having, and I think it's actually moved to global. Mm-hmm. But the which was sparked by Floyd George, and the I guess the ongoing tension, which I see and I view myself as recognizing that I have unconscious bias. Mm-hmm. We all have unconscious bias, but I see events like that as being triggered by unconscious bias. And I didn't look up the frightened police officer who was part of that whole thing, and contributed in whatever way, because it's not yet proved, to Floyd George's death. Like, that's just a tragic event, and the thing that it feels to me like that's something that is being talked about, and I feel a need to weigh in on that, and also with the caveat understanding that my language in talking about something like that is not going to be accurate and as in politically correct. I do not consider myself someone who is well versed in the use of language. This would be similar to me weighing in on a conversation around transgender or around things I have no real experience of as a white guy. In her area, we're talking about what is being framed as racial outrage or challenges. And I think that we, Sarah and I, and my wife as well, relative to Flow Network, if there's an evolution that's going on with our species right now. And I think part of that, we have to actually really refine our understanding of what the end game is. And the end game is unity, is integration. It's this acknowledgement and this awareness, not just from an intellectual level, but from a being level, that we are all equals. We are all information plus energy vibrating. We are all souls. We are flow in our definition. It's the definition of actually being flow. Just be it is a reframe on a whole pile of concepts that are coming together, and it is something I've been talking about for at least a year. We've been talking about it. There are going to be events that happen over the next little while that are going to be within a historic frame of reference, significant catastrophes, crisis, challenge, because unfortunately we as a species, we evolve at the speed of crisis. And it's not until we're actually faced with a really deep crisis that most of us, myself included, look at, like, who the hell am I? Why am I here?
Mm-hmm.
Where is here? How does this whole thing work? Where are we?
Mm-hmm.
So with Floyd George, I think it's very topical, and the little that I've actually checked in on it, there's lots of reframes from thought leaders who I'll call white thought leaders, who are initially weighing in and a little bit offside on their stance because they couldn't understand why black men first, like this whole dance. And it's about, it's human beings first. It's all of us first, all of us as equals. But as soon as you actually limit it to language, and the use of language then refers to metaphors, and when I'm using my language, I'm using my metaphors and my mind models based on what I was influenced by and was introduced when I was young.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was young, we were just reflecting. I did not have anyone of color in my grade school. In my high school, I went to 4 different high schools. It wasn't until my last high school, yes, because I graduated from high school at age 29. That's huh. But not because, just by virtue of us moving around, and my mom and dad choosing schools that I wasn't really all that keen on, but they wanted to get me involved with a Catholic high school out of the gate. Now, being the eldest, I go, okay, I'll go to the Catholic high school, and I couldn't hang in. But there was no one of color in that whole Catholic high school. There was no one of color in the high school in a more rural up in Grimsby. And it wasn't until we moved to Oakville in my last year, there was two men. Actually, maybe more than that. Actually, I was later after I left.
Yeah.
But it was weird. It was like, how do you relate to that?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, needless to say, and I was just reflecting on a couple episodes ago, we did an episode on the Syab virus, which you've coined, which is this phrase of the virus of being in a bias box.
Yeah.
And I think
stuck in a SIAB.
Right. So
stuck
just,
in a bias box.
like the context of what Flow Network is about is really having this grander scope, a spiritual scope, or a energetic scope. We use the hashtag "This is the energy age." So we're coming from that frame, but also coming in from just our humanness in terms of we all have biases. Like we can't remove or deny what our upbringing has been and how that influences, like you said, our mind models. But for me in this, there's parts of me that say, well, who am I to talk about this? I don't know what to say. Same with you. I could be sloppy with my language. I'm not here to offend anybody, but it's really, now more than ever is for all of us to come together and realize, okay, we have these biases, we have been living a little bit sheltered, and how can we come with these open hands and say, I want to learn. I am here to unify, to heal my own wounds first, and then show up and say, like you said, we're all humans. This is our home, this planet Earth, and we're all equals. And before the call, we had this, and we've been talking all this year about the structure changing, the big pivot of the hierarchy, and there being this sense of control and top down and position power to all the playing field is leveled. How can we all come together with equal voices? And really it comes from having this space of non-judgment. And I think we can often get caught up in judgment, and then our anger from the past of what we've been through individually, as a collective, as a species. There's a lot of anger there to look at within ourselves, and then alchemize, because when we come with anger to anything, we'll be met with that anger. And what I'm seeing is this, we bring our judgments to the table, we bring more fuel, we bring more gas sometimes to a fight, which isn't what it's about. It's about coming in with our humanness, with this understanding of how can we value other people's opinions, and really be hyper aware of where we bring judgments into the table, into the mix, because we attract more of what we judge.
Yeah.
And ultimately it's this internal game, as we talk about here. I actually woke up this morning a little bit wobbly myself and probably feeling everything. And often when I wake up in the morning, I have a sentence that's just repeating over and over in my head. and I happened to have my journal down, and it was realize the power of energy in times of crisis.
Yeah.
So what if all of this crisis, because I agree with you, I feel like this is just a start of being able to witness all the ways we're divided. We're divided as a collective, but also the ways we're divided within ourselves. And then understanding that we've been so fixated on just the outer world, but really it starts with our spirit. It starts with our energetic frequency. And as we've been talking about on the FlowShow themes of like the most important thing we can do right now is go inside and just really recognize where we're fragmented, where we're divided, where we're still carrying anger for the past, and understand the power of doing that work.
Yes. And I want to invite any of the listeners, if you've got questions or comments, certainly feel free to share them.
Elaine is saying hello, hi.
Hi.
Rome's here as well. Hi, Rome.
Hey.
And he's saying, don't know how it is up there, but the States, there's a clear understanding it is them versus us, and it goes both ways. Yeah, and you know what? That's exactly, if we play into that them versus us, like we'll stay in that perpetual cycle of separation, and then this big pivot is unification.
I'm gonna back up. Yeah. What I recognize with Flow Network, what we're about is actually raising the vibe, raising consciousness, raising to a higher frequency. Mm-hmm. What's necessary within that space is to present something that's called a context, and the best frame of reference I've heard for the use of context is it's a cartoon. It's a cartoon of two young fish swimming in the water, and an older fish swims by and says, "How's the water today, boys?" And the boys look at each other and go, "What's water?" So water provides the context for fish. They're in it, and it's part of what it is to be a fish. Part of our context is what it is to be a human being. We need air, we need oxygen. And the context that I have been introduced to as a function of my wife going and studying for a master's in adult education, the context that I was introduced through her was something called ontology. And ontology is the study of the way of being. And when we're talking about being, we're talking about that 95% of our behavior that's actually driven unconsciously from being. So the whole idea of a context is to be able to go give a frame of reference so that we can all get on the same page about a topic. And the topic for me about ontology and the way of being is, it puts it in I'm very visual, so I see this context. The issue that's going on right now is people are waking up from the doing to the being, and within the context of ontology, there's basically only three realities. There's the outer reality, there's my reality of other people, and my inner reality. And every one of those, my sense of my outer, my sense of other people, and my sense of my inner is 100% subjective to me. So I do not see the world, and I do not experience the world the way it is. I experience the way the world is. I experience it as I am. So when we're having these bridging conversations of what it would actually be like to be specifically in the States, in this them versus us, I am not suggesting by any stretch that I am an expert on bridging different perspectives, and I have this alchemist orientation to language that actually then just calms everybody down, because there is no answer particularly when you're starting to talk about ways of being. Because in our society, all we've been educated on is the 5%, which is ways of doing, and ways of doing so that we can experience ways of having through consumerism. The spiritual practices that are reflected in our church, or if you happen to have a spiritual practice, that starts to get into ways of being. Mm-hmm. And we do not have a collective context yet in our society to even begin to bridge that conversation. But we do at Flow Network, where we're talking about the context of the internal network effect, and it actually impacts other people and the outer world. I'm talking about light core, the consulting company we've run for a number of years, we frame Lightcore as the business as the mechanism for change. So the center of business is people, and the center of people is light. And so if you want to actually make a big difference in your business, get into the core of who we are and start to learn how to light up. And that is, from my observation, we're going through the shake up to wake up to show up to light up. So we're in the shake up phase, and we're shaking, like our world is being shaken by all kinds of phenomena, and people are waking up to the fact that, hey, I've been offside, and or this doesn't work for me anymore, and or I'm really pissed off about being marginalized and being thrown in a box because of the way I talk, the way my skin color, my gender, where I grew up in the world. Those types of things are really necessary for us to actually start to come together on, to be able to go and understand. And because they trigger deep fear, like deep fear that's been downloaded for literally, when you look at our evolutionary chain, for thousands, one could argue millions of years, we have to actually get a handle on that. And that's what the intention is in having this conversation on Flow Network today, is to just set a context that say, first off, this issue is up right now in the States. I am, not going out very far on a limb to say this is just the first of many challenges. We've already had the Me Too, and that this is the slice on gender, or the slice on those who are, taking advantage of position power versus, personal power. We have all those cuts and all those slices and dices of life. They are now going to present us with the opportunity to actually identify, where do I sit? Do I sit at a low frequency when I'm dealing with that, which is actually not inclusive, it's very exclusive? Or do I sit at a high frequency, which is very inclusive, which the metaphor for that would be more love or flow or peace, whereas down the bottom it's fear, fight, flight, freeze. And we see a lot of people responding to the situation in fear, and okay, they're doing they're doing what they feel they need to do to make a stand, to be able to go and move up this notional context, or this notional Jacob's ladder, or whatever frame of reference works for us. We have models ourselves we use to be able to go and help people understand, like, are you actually adopting a stance that's at a low frequency, so a disempowered stance, or an empowered stance? And everybody is doing the best they can with what they have.
That's right. And I think if we hold that and really keep check to that, like, we're all doing the best that we can. And what we're recognizing the importance of listening. You said that at one point, like, really listening to ourselves, in what's happening inside of ourselves. And it's not to just say, oh, division is bad, let's jump to unity. It's like we've been saying through this network, it's like we're going through these stages of figuring out who we thought we were, and then who we're not, to really come to the true essence of who it is that we are. And so
beautiful context.
There's a point in that, and I'm still in that, in my own micro world of shedding what I'm not. So there is a period where you feel divided and fragmented, and it's not to, like, kind of try to duct tape it together because it feels uncomfortable. It's like allowing yourself to go into what feels uncomfortable, allowing yourself to listen to what's kind of uncomfortable in the body, so we can clear our channel. Like, we're a channel of light, like you said, the core of people is light. And what I believe, our outside reality, as we've been saying all along on this network, is a reflection of our internal reality. So this means all of us, we all have, obviously, the results out there are fragmented. So this is our evolutionary jump point, as we've been talking about it. As I just saw Bruce Lipton smiling in one of his Instagram pictures of, congratulations, we're making this jump. And it's important to have that higher frequency from a genuine embodied place, to say, okay, well, this is what's to be expected, this shake up, how can we stay calm in that space? And for me, the only answer in my life is having a disciplined spiritual practice that keeps you anchored to that space, and to be continuously reflective, like each day, even, of what needs to be shed, what needs to let go. And it's ultimately really coming to our true nature. Like, what does it really mean to be human? What are really our needs as humans? And to reflect that because of all of our conditioning, because of all of our biases, we've unknowingly, unconsciously been living in ways that are not natural, that are are exclusive, that are, controlled and manipulated, and all of these different things. And I just wanted to put Elaine, sounds very cool. She facilitates programs called Roots of Empathy. Love that. I have a
That's
podcast called
good.
Speak from the Root, where they bring babies into a classroom, and the baby is the teacher because the baby is born without bias or judgment. And we've been talking about this a lot. That's great. I love that. And I made a little video this morning. I went to the beach just to connect to nature. So important as well, because nature is also our teacher, and it's a more of a pure, unbiased reflection of who we really are inside. And how can we, yeah, like you said, hold that we're all doing the best that we can, and be in this kind of state of grace while we're all figuring out our worlds, and we're all shedding what we thought we were, what we're not, and then really stepping into who we are, so we can come together and create this new earth that is really viewing everyone as equals, and where everyone has an equal voice.
Yeah. I wrote down when you were, I was reminded is the stages within the context is who I thought I was, who I'm not, who I actually am. And to introduce something, Jenna Smith is a healer coach that we've had a relationship with now for a couple of years, and she introduced me to the concept of difference between humanness and beingness.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole idea is I thought I was the humanness component, which is a great language for I'm a human having a spiritual experience. And then you move on to that. It says, hey, no, I'm not just human. And then you move eventually to who I discover in terms of language. I'm a being having a human experience. So I got the beingness and humanness is the mix that we're all coming to understand. And not to suggest that's the only language, but for me, it's actually a nice language because beingness actually becomes, it's very heart centered. It's heart coherence using the logic of complex living system, heart math, logic. So there's more of a heart centric orientation that is being. And then if you're coming from the humanness, you're coming from the head orientation. This is where all the bias, you access all the unconscious bias. And that's what trips people up all over the place. That's what requires we move from head to, oh my gosh, if I don't get out of my head, I'm going to kill myself or kill somebody else because it's just so confusing and creates rage all the time, to moving more into a heart space. Mm-hmm. So there's all kinds of metaphors and there's all kinds of teaching that are out there right now for this exact reason, because we are evolving, and it's crisis that tends to actually trigger evolution, and certainly in a fast way. When we've slowly evolved as a species over thousands of years, and now all of a sudden we have a quickening that has been something we've been watching for a long time, mm-hmm. and it never shows up the way one thinks it's going to. But here we are in the middle of it, and we're going to do the best we can to actually navigate and help whoever actually wants to jump on board with that proactively. But it is challenging, to say the least, because again, as I started today's show, I realize I have bias around people of color that just gets triggered, and I experienced that playing sports. Yeah, funny scenarios on playing sports, because I was of the belief that it was easy to get beaten up by people who were actually different than me. So when we ever play a team where there was a lot of people of color, a lot of young men of color, I just always just fell apart. And I've also experienced it in other scenarios. And a really good friend of ours he plays with us in terms of a jazz trio. And I never really think of it on that way, but I realize I have a bias going on all the time, because the tapes I downloaded from my parents, and they downloaded from their parents, they downloaded from their parents, and they downloaded from their parents. Those are playing out so that I can become aware of them and then I can heal them. Mm-hmm. Question for Tim.
The question for Tim, I threw it up there for you. Is it possible that the current status is past the point of no return, meaning the world needs to revolutionize And then the next point was evolution or revolution.
Well, it's in, thank you for the question, because I think that evolution, we have a choice to evolve or revolve, and revolve tends to actually be fairly disruptive, but nonetheless, like all our modeling is actually, it's a revolve. So when we started this, and I started this a few years ago, I was always using the word revolution, because it's a cycle. We're going to go through this revolution, and we're going to actually let go of identity. And because revolution is something that has it's already has a context out there in the media, I chose not to use revolution. I chose to use evolution, because evolution seemed that it was actually much more safe. And most of the marketing, for anybody that I've seen currently marketing and selling, they're actually using uplift, saying, hey, use a more heart-centric, more adaptive organization, be inclusive. Because people, in using consumerism and then using FOMO and fear, usually people get fired up when they hear the word revolution. It doesn't move them in their heart, it moves them out of their heart into their head. So this is it's a really, I could go for days on this particular topic. It is one of those things that needs to actually be, I believe, needs to actually have a definition around it, because as soon as we actually use words, we're into labels, and we're into mind models, mindsets that can actually trigger people very quickly.
And that is the challenge, even with words, and even who's using those words and how they're used. They, like you said, we all have our own biases even about what a word means.
Yeah.
So
and a word has a frequency, right? Like it has a historic frequency. You use the word revolution. The revolution has more of a fear base to it. Evolution has more of a soft, gentle. When in fact,
maybe even for some, revolution has a,
exactly. That's my point. Like when you look at evolution, I'm sure the dinosaurs that actually all vanished as a function of the big challenges they had back in their day, they were saying this isn't all that fun. There was fire and freaking lava and all kinds of ouchies, but because it was so long ago, we've actually calmed it down. And when we're talking with human beings, we're talking about behavior, and we're talking about bias, we're talking about fear. So I can't see it's going to be anything but a revolution. Like and that's unfortunate. And what I'm very committed to is to be able to go and help people see an option in this, so they can actually be more heart-centered. And there's some beautiful photographs in the press of protesters being open-hearted in front of all of these shields of police. I mean, it reminds me of Tiananmen Square back in China, like the one woman standing in front of a tank, and then another image where someone's putting a flower, that they had flowers in the whatever, with the front of the nozzle of the tank. Like there's all kinds of images, and I'm not saying there's one that's right or wrong, but it seems to me, just given the nature of where we are, this is going to be a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, for me, I just keep coming to like the revolution being the putting the power in our inside and evolving on first from the individual space.
Yeah.
And then we talk a lot about this idea of pull, like when we get to that space of heart coherence within ourselves, and then come together and start to build new from that space of beingness, that genuine space of beingness, where it is coming from peace and it is coming from inclusivity. We start to attract people, and we begin to build new. And what if it's about just building that new and allowing the revolution to be this, I mean, I'd like to see it as graceful as possible, but it's holding that support of the power of the presence of that peace is what we talk about all the time.
Yes.
The Maharishi effect, where if we can gather as a community that has that understanding, we literally change the frequency around us, and that being a container to hold the space for others in their journey of that evolution. Because anytime we try to fight with this has been our history. So if a revolution has that energy of a fight, what we attract back in that space.
I think of when I think of individuals. I mean, I think of John Lennon, and I think of the Beatles song "Revolution." Hey, I also think of Gandhi, and Nelson Mandela, Mother Teresa. I mean, they were quite challenged, beaten, physically tortured, beaten, thrown in jail for how many years? Mandela, like 27 years or something. Like it's like unbelievable. That's a life experience that you would have that as a life experience. But there it is. What is life? Who are we? Why? Where are we? Why are we?
Mm-hmm. I like Eleni. How is that how you pronounce your name? I hope. Revolution is also movement in
Yeah,
360
it's
degrees.
300.
That's a big pivot. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And our models are they're spirals, they're cycles.
Mm-hmm.
So we are, if we're adopting that as a from a reference, I totally agree. It's through revolution after revolution after revolution and it's a personal revolution. It starts typically outer revolution, then revolution with other people, and then ultimately your inner is what actually. And once you move to the inner, you move into being this heart centric. Then you can move out from there, always being heart inner centric. And that's something in my experience that is a way of bringing peace to the world, without any conflict, with the caveat that says that's not the way people always are going to respond to peace, because peace also,
Elaine, it is. Yes, peace also.
Yeah, so peace, people's respond to peace, unless you're a master at actually holding that space. Often, if you hold the intellectual concept of peace, it triggers people because it triggers their fear. If you actually are being the essence of peace, it calms people down entirely. So it is my observation, having studied this concept for a very long time. It's a bit tricksy dance. It's a tricksy navigation, and it is not something that is going to be dealt with and healed through talking, or even a head, or a treaty on this whole concept, or a newspaper article, or a book, or whatever. It's an internal experience. All we have to actually explain life, for the most part, is words. I'm reminded of the thought that the most beautiful things in life you can't even give words to. The second most beautiful things are the things that show up in music, in art, in the creative. And the third best things are the things we talk about. So we're doing the best we can on the Flow Show to talk about these higher etheric concepts, with an understanding that it is a struggle to actually get a consensus on the use of language that everyone would agree with. And again, there's the longest answer maybe on the difference between revolution and evolution. It very much is it's dependent on the resonance of the person who's using that concept.
Yeah, the resonance we've spoken a lot about on this network, and it ties into this whole idea that we are energy, and to become so much more familiar with the language of energy. Yes. And art is, like you said, one of the best ways.
It's high frequency. 3333.
3333. Well, is that a good time to do our flow in out?
I think it is, and I really appreciate the comments and the opportunity for us to actually talk about this with the caveat and the understanding that we're all equals. I am not an expert on this. Look at me, I'm a 6'1" white guy. Like I mean, I do the best I can on that front, but I am definitely not. I've not ever lived that experience, so I have no credentials on what that would even for a second be like.
Yes, we're all doing the best that we can, and the whole idea of this platform is just to create conversation and evolve.
I see Elaine, actually, evolution keeps moving. I now decided what this is called is re-evolution.
Re-evolution.
So it's revolution and evolution
connect together. Yes, we revolve, we revolve and evolve.
Yeah, so yeah, I like that. I'm actually going to write at the top of my page here.
There we go.
Evolution.
Love you as well, Rome. Love you, all the people who are joining and who are doing the best that they can. And thanks for being you.
Thanks for being you.
Thanks
Flow for an out.
Flow for an out. We look forward to chatting with you next time. Oh, I don't have my video ready. Are you?
Okay,
You got your guitar ready?
give me a second. Yeah.
Let's do our outro, and I can get the video ready here.
So I'll do a more gentle outro after that show.
Sounds good.
And whenever you want to.